Hi, it's Nikki Lowe and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show. I'm your host, and for nearly 2 decades now, I've been an executive coach and leadership development consultant. And on this show, I share evidence-based insights from my coaching, leadership and psychological expertise, and inspiring interviews that help women like you to combine your work, life and motherhood in a more successful and sustainable way. Join me and my special guests as we delve into leadership and lifestyle topics for women, empowering you to thrive one conversation at a time. I'm so happy that you're here, and let's get on with today's episode. Welcome back, and if you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you've been here for a while, you'll know my own journey with burnout has made me fiercely curious about well-being, about how we maintain the energy to fuel our ambitions and still show up in our lives happy and fulfilled. And today's guest is here to help me. I'm joined by Gemma Jefferson, a chartered physiotherapist and performance consultant who's worked in elite sports for over a decade, including 3 summer Paralympic Games, and served as an athlete health lead with the UK Sports Institute. And I've had the pleasure of working with Gemma on some women's leadership retreats in the Peak District and seeing her work up close and personal. And she's the real deal. What struck me most was Gemma's honest sharing about her own journey into motherhood and the health challenges her family navigated. And she's taken the best of elite performance and sharpened it for real life as a busy working mum. And through her business, Made for More Movement, Gemma blends sports performance expertise with breathwork, yoga, and a whole person approach. And she's given ambitious women like you and me the practical tools that fit our busy schedules. So these tiny habit shifts, these nervous system resets, and ways to listen to our body cues so that we can show up at our best consistently. So if your current performance plan is coffee and willpower, this episode is for you. As Gemma was talking to me in this interview, I felt my nervous system just calm. She is the most grounded voice in, I think, a world that can bombard us with all of these things that we should be doing with our bodies. And I really hope you love this conversation as much as I do. So I won't keep you any longer. Let me welcome Gemma. Welcome, Gemma. It is brilliant to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Nikki. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So as I said to people in the intro, we know each other from working on a female leadership retreat together where you came along and it was the first time I met you and you did just the most incredible stuff. And I was like, Gemma, we need to get you on the podcast, not only to share what you do, but also your story. So for those that don't know you and what you do, can you give us a brief overview of kind of who you are, what you do, and how you've come to do it as well?
Sure, yeah. So I am a physio by background. I have been a physio working in elite sport for something frightening like 14 years now. So it means I've been to 3 games as well, 3 Paralympic Games, which has been amazing. And I loved it. I do still love it. I'm very fortunate to have worked with elite athletes. During that time, I've been on my own personal journeys ever. So I've now a mum to 2 young boys, so just turned 5, just turned 3, which has been amazing. But as part of that process, I guess it's worth saying, like, as a physio, I've always loved movement. I've always trained. I've always been quite physical. I've always loved to move my body. And there's something about the journey through pregnancy and postpartum and then trying to fit it all in as a new mum that suddenly I had to completely revisit what movement and feeling good in myself felt like. So it really spun me, like being pregnant, being a new mum, trying to be a working mum, all of the stuff that had worked for me before, like, just didn't feel like it was really working. So I really had to kind of throw that on the scrap heap, do a whole load of work and research and self-discovery. And yeah, it's really been fascinating because I feel like I'm now in a place where the work I'm now really passionate about is combining my knowledge as a performance physiotherapist, having worked with elite athletes and understanding how to help people peak and recover at the right times, with this understanding of actually just day to day what your body needs, and particularly as a woman, what our needs are compared to men, and what women's needs physically and mentally are as we go through different life stages and all this really important stuff. So yeah, that's a real, I guess, helicopter view of where I've landed in this place of actually being really fortunate to work with, specifically with women at this point in time who want to just get a little bit more out of their everyday and their performance and what that means. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to be able to combine sort of my love of physiotherapy in the body and a whole load of research and years of experience into what I do now.
And how lucky are we to have you on the podcast to dive into this? Because as you're saying this, I'm like, this is so up my street. Like, being an ambitious woman that wants to perform in my life, but also, just as you say, the practicalities of having a young family and wanting to be there for them. And how do you find yourself in all of that? And I think your unique perspective of having that high performance, but having gone on that journey yourself of going, this is all great, but like, I've literally got 15 minutes today.
Yeah, and it changes. Like our needs change. Like the training that worked for me, I used the term training quite loosely, by the way. I was never an elite athlete myself, but like the stuff physically that worked for me in my 20s and my early 30s, it just wasn't working for me. I wasn't getting toned. I wasn't feeling strong. I wasn't feeling the changes. My aerobic fitness wasn't improving. So even when I had the time, I was doing the stuff that had worked for me in the past, and it wasn't helping my mindset. It wasn't helping my body in the same way. So yeah, it's been fascinating. And what is fantastic about sort of straddling these two worlds is that the work I'm doing in that kind of for myself and for women in this kind of like really diving into nervous system and body and those sorts of bits and the embodiment stuff, I wasn't expecting this, but it is actually now going back to performance, and it's helping my athletes in a completely different way as well. So I just love how I kind of get to switch between these two worlds, because one definitely helps the other and vice versa. So yeah, it's fascinating.
And that just makes my heart kind of sing, because I am often banging this drum of motherhood makes us better in our work. And that's a prime example of actually, as you say, your experiences as a mum, you're taking back into elite performance sport. And like, who would have thought that would have been the case? But I hear that so often. So let's get down into this then. Tell me about some of the strategies that you work with women on, some of the journey that you've gone on and the lessons that you're taking now applying in your work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most obvious one is moving our bodies, which massive term, could mean anything to any number of people. I think particularly there's a group of driven women who are at a certain stage of their life who are probably at peak of their career, particularly in terms of like earning potential. But that comes at the time when you've got a young family. It comes at the time where, you've got a partner who's also probably thriving and doing their own things. You might have parents or family who are starting to get older and you've got one eye on looking after them. So it comes at a time in our life where like suddenly everything feels like it's just peaked together at the same time. And I think with that, typically what we see, or what I see really, really often particularly with women, is this tightening, like we carry this burden, we carry this weight. And we know that what that does to the musculoskeletal and the nervous system is we literally tighten up, like we become constricted. You feel it, right? So women start talking about feeling achy, or they start feeling stiff, or they get, that suddenly this neck pain just won't go. Stretching's not helping them in the same way. All these little niggles that we, again, probably have a tendency to ignore because we're mothers and we don't have time for it. So we just, brush it under the carpet. So I think that the movement that I think really, really helps women who, if they're feeling all that stuff, is anything that brings softness, soft, gentle movement. And it is so counterintuitive to a lot of women the women that I've just described tend to be I want to be strong. I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to go and I'm going to throw some really heavy weights around. I'm going to go to a HIIT class. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to work hard. And it's great, right? Because it does help hormones and it does help you feel like you've done something good. However, in terms of just what that does to an already overstressed nervous system, it's just ramping it up and ramping it up and ramping it up. So really, like, the first place I started was really just the softest, most gentle movement I could find. So I am a yoga instructor as well. And I'd always done, people might be familiar with like the Ashtangas and the Vinyasas and the quite intense flows and strong poses and those sorts of bits, like where the real kind of sweaty work happens. And suddenly I was like, do you know what? My postpartum body, I'm really stressed. I suffered a lot, particularly after my second, with postnatal anxiety. For the first time, I'd never had anxiety before. So I tried to do my normal yoga and I tried to do my normal practice, and it was just, I wasn't settling and I was scattered and it wasn't helping me. And I just did a bit of research and I was like, what happens if I do yin yoga for the first time? And if people don't understand what yin yoga is, you hold the same pose for minutes. So it's normally at least 3 minutes of the same pose. And it is not easy, but there is no hiding from how your body and your mind is in yin yoga. And it was such a turning point when I found yin yoga, because it's really hard for all sorts of, the opposite reasons of why moving quickly and moving heavily, is hard. Like, it's just stillness and it's giving into your body and it's really trying to lean into relaxation and it's finding the stillness. So all of this movement that I started doing was like yin yoga, dance flows, really like just flowing beautiful softness, because with our nervous system getting ramped up and getting wired and getting busy, it just creates, the fight or flight in our bodies just creates, I've got to move, I've got to be stressful, I've got to be ready, I've got to be ready for action. So it's just tension on tension on tension, and nervous system being wired and ramped up all the time. So we just need to give ourselves time to step away from that. And movement is such a lovely way to do that.
And I love how you describe it as softness, because that is such a beautiful, and as you say softness, I kind of breathe and kind of go, and how difficult that is for us as like high achieving women, that actually we've had to, we've probably conditioned the softness out of ourselves, being in a corporate environment, being in a commercial environment, being in a fast paced world. And like, I had this, as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, but oh God, no.
Yeah,
and I imagine you experience that with women as well.
Yeah, and I think particularly, again, if you put yourself in a corporate world, like say someone who's presenting, there's so much psychology, which is absolutely right and absolutely appropriate, about like, if you want to get across a point, like hold yourself in a certain way, and you've probably heard the superhuman pose to get your confidence up, and these are all great things because we're trying to tell our nervous system, I am strong, it's time to perform, I'm ready, I'm wired, I'm switched on. Great, like in that moment, that's what you need. And yet we've got to be able to switch it off. We've got to be able to come out of that. Like, that's not a normal feminine resting state. That's not how females recover. And it's not how we are hardwired for connection. We're hardwired for that kind of, that softer kind of, high level connection with people. And I think if we don't allow ourselves to return to that state, that's when we just start feeling like, why am I feeling so tense? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Gosh, my knee's sore. Oh God, now my ankle's sore. Now my back's uncomfortable. This is a constant kind of fighting fires of aches and pains is what I see repeatedly. So yeah, I think the first thing definitely that I would find for women is a lot of the work that I do initially is stillness and softness. And it sounds so easy, but for a lot of these women, it is the hardest thing I could ask them to do.
Yeah. And I remember after my journey with burnout, the hardest lesson for me was learning to rest. And I read a book called Daring to Rest. And I was like, oh, that's such a good title, because it does feel really like almost, it's the most human thing, but it's become the most unhuman thing, in that, oh my God, I'm going against social expectations and all the cultural narrative about go harder, go faster. And I really felt like I was having to lean into that vulnerability. I've got to dare to do something different because my body absolutely needs this.
Yeah. And even with the information and things that are out there, take something like, I'm really passionate about breath work and the power of breath work, but you take the information that's out there now, and there is a good way to do breath work and there is a bad way to do breath work, and God forbid if you do, don't do it correctly, and you've got to do it textbook, and you've got to feel physiologically better, and you've got to stress the system this way. And like, we've taken these things that are literally as nature intended, and we've made them so complex, and we've given it a pass or fail. So if you tell a driven woman who's a high achiever that there's, the perfect way to do something, God, like, she's going to stick at it, and she's going to work hard, and she's going to force it, and she's going to keep going until she's passed. And as long as she's passed it, like, everything will fall into place and she'll feel great. But that's also not what happens, like the body needs consistency and it needs gentleness and it needs this return to a natural state. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is really, modern life is incredible for so many reasons. And we're so fortunate to have all of these things around us, aren't we? Convenience, technology, all these fantastic things that make life what it is today. And yet, I think from a physiological and from a musculoskeletal, so from a muscle bone nervous system point of view, I think that, these technology inconveniences, they've moved so fast that we haven't had time to adapt and we haven't had time to adjust. So our bodies are still craving what nature intended. They're still craving gentle movement, dynamic movement, not, it doesn't love repetition. Even if I think to, like the triathletes that I work with and things, like actually the injuries that we see are because they do the same thing, long distance runners, like just the same thing all the time. And often with those athletes, the recovery comes not in teaching them how to run better or train them stronger. It actually comes in, well, let's give the body an opportunity to do something that's anti-running. Let's give it something that's rotating and twisting and bending and moving. Like, let's give it some variation and some dynamic opportunity. And the same is true of us. Like I think the body likes variation. It likes to be challenged. The nervous system wants to be stressed, but then it wants the recovery and it wants this ebb and flow. And I think that's what we're really lacking, is we kind of, we come to the desk and we have maybe a stressful day of calls and emails and deadlines. And then we go to the gym and we've got 40 minutes. We do a HIIT class and we're like under pressure and we're stressed. And then we go home and we're trying to do dinner and then the kids are playing up and you've remembered there's a Halloween fancy dress that you haven't thought about for a party at the weekend. So suddenly your evenings become, high stress and high worry. So I think we really could do with taking the lessons from nature and taking the lessons of what our bodies really need. And that's what I really, really love doing, is like actually just giving women an opportunity to recenter, reground, go back to what the body needs. And it's not groundbreaking stuff, but for a lot of women, it's hard, but also what they really need.
Yeah. And as you were talking, for those that are kind of listening audio only, I'd got this big smile on my face because it was like you were describing me about like, there's a perfect way to breathe. Give me the checklist. Let me tick off the perfect, because then I know I'm good enough. So, and yeah, as you say, and I love this because it's all about how do we work in as much as work out and kind of re-energize and recover. So if there's somebody listening going, yeah, loving what you're saying.
Yeah.
What might be some of the things that they could do, perhaps around breath work? Most people have heard that breath work's good, but it's that thing of, well, I breathe every kind of, so what am I meant to be doing differently?
And when we talk about it, like I say, I am going to talk about like some real headline stuff, because it's not perfect. You have to find your own way. There's no tick box and it's fixed. But there are definitely two things, and people can literally try it while they're listening. The first one is, if you are feeling that, at any point in the day that things are just starting to get on top of you, whether you're starting, the kids are screaming mummy for the 370th time of the day, and all this, and you just feel yourself starting to get a bit tense and a bit anxious. The simplest breath trick to do is to make sure that you exhale for longer than you inhale. And that is it. So all you need to think about.
And why is that important? Because I didn't know this until a couple of years ago. When you know the kind of the science behind it, like, oh, okay. Why is that important?
Yeah, there's lots of levels of science to it, but the simplest one is that actually, like, what can happen is we tend to inhale to create activity. Like you tend to, you need oxygen to fuel the muscles. So obviously a big inhale is you're trying to store the muscles. But if you don't fully exhale, you don't exhale properly, what we get is this storage of gas. So there is what we call residual volume in your lungs. So that's just a space that is always taken up with kind of dead air. And that's important because if there's no air in your lungs, they collapse in on themselves. So we have to have residual volume. But if we don't fully exhale, what happens is the residual volume actually just increases and increases and increases and increases. So one of the reasons that you start to feel anxious and to feel this kind of slight panic is because actually you cannot take as big a breath in because you've just got this kind of dead air sat in your lungs and you have less space to breathe in. So anyone who's felt out of breath, like it's the same physiological thing that's happening. So your brain is thinking, gosh, there must be something happening because I feel out of breath and I can't take in enough air. So there is a physiological thing that your brain is picking up on and going, well, there's something to worry about. And then the kids are still screaming your name. And then you're still worried about X, Y, and Z. So you're trying to get more oxygen and there's a battle. So the simplest thing that we're doing is we're clearing out that dead air. We're clearing out that residual. We're kind of reducing that residual volume to where it should be. So suddenly the next breath in that we take in is actually much more satisfying, and it is fuller and it is deeper. So actually you're fueling your muscles and your brain appropriately. So there's that layer to it. And the other layer is that actually when you exhale, like it does lots and lots of lovely things. So your diaphragm has to move fully. So quite a number of us, and I'll come on to diaphragmatic breathing in a second, but a lot of us don't use our diaphragm fully as we breathe. So what that means is that your diaphragm becomes a bit stuck.
Yeah.
And around the diaphragm are lots and lots of very important structures, one of which is the vagus nerve, which runs directly through the diaphragm. So if we are not pumping, if we're not using the diaphragm properly, the vagus nerve just doesn't get stimulated and triggered in quite the same way. And what we know is by fully exhaling, we're kind of maximizing the range of motion of the diaphragm. The vagus nerve gets beautifully kind of stimulated. Suddenly we're starting to tip into the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you want me to just touch on that really simply, the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, there's two elements to it really. The sympathetic, which is your wired fight, flight, fright element, which is super important, has absolutely a critical role in every day for most of us. And then there's your parasympathetic, which is your rest, digest state. And what we really would like to see is that, on any given moment, let's talk about the athletes I work with. We want them to kind of be in a parasympathetic state. It's not a switch, by the way. It is like a continuum, but we'll talk about it simply. So we want them to be in a parasympathetic state. And then as they start to warm up for a training session, they'll start to be switching into sympathetic. It's one of the reasons a warm-up is important. And then as they peak in the training session, they should really be in that sympathetic. I'm working hard. I need every reserve possible. But then when they finish the training session, we really want them to come back out of that sympathetic. We want them to be in parasympathetic, rest, digest, I'm recovering, my cells regenerating. And that's where all of the training adaptation and the cell regeneration actually happens. So the switch between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic is super important. And what we know is that in the modern world, most of us are spending a lot of time in the sympathetic state. So a lot of us, for reasons that are not a saber-toothed tiger attacking us, for reasons that are, my emails are coming in thick and fast, my phone's been blowing up, I've forgotten the Halloween fancy dress costume. That has happened to me recently, can you tell? Oh God, it's still living with me. So yeah, for all these reasons that the modern world are telling us there's something to worry about, we're in this sympathetic state when actually we're just sat at our desk and we're sat still. So to bring it back to the exhale, an exhale is the simplest way of very, very quickly bringing you from a sympathetic into a parasympathetic state. So the simplest thing is count your inhale. So if you and don't try and change it. So just count. So if I'm inhaling for like a count of 4, just make sure your exhale is 5 or 6. And I'm going to ask you to do that for 3 or 4 rounds. And that is it. That is one of the simplest ways to ground and center yourself in any given moment and switch. And what's really lovely, Nick, is even if you do it now, like if you take a breath in for 4 and exhale for 5 or 6, you should really feel that literally your shoulders, like there's just reduction in tension straight away as soon as you have that longer exhale.
Shall we have a go at doing it with people?
So let's all do it together. So sit up just where you are, nice and comfortably. And then when you're ready, full inhale, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you're going to do it again. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. And you can do that, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds. But there's something about those last couple of seconds on the exhale. I even saw your shoulders kind of just go, oh, yeah. It's just the quickest fix. So that's a very long explanation of the simplest thing. So just exhale for longer than you inhale. And then the other thing with breathing that's can be massively overcomplicated is this idea of diaphragmatic breathing. So again, if we go back to the nervous system, When you are in a sympathetic state, you're just kind of in this, I need to get oxygen in as soon as I possibly can. So we tend to, what do you do when you exercise? Where you pant and it's very upper chest and you're just sucking air in and you're trying to turn over gas as quickly as you can. So it's very high respiration rate, upper part of your chest. And what we should only need to access that when you're working maximally, when you're really at the top end of what you can possibly do. What we want to be doing most of the time is diaphragmatic breathing, so very much breathing from the base of your lungs. So the simplest way to get a gauge of that is put one hand on your upper chest and one hand like on your sort of at the base of your sternum, so really the top of your tummy, in between your rib cage, really. So sort of on that soft, fleshy part. And all you're going to do is, sometimes it's easy to close your eyes and try not to change anything initially, but just get a sense of when you're inhaling, where is the movement? Where is the breath coming into? And if you are someone that thinks that as you breathe in, your upper chest is moving more than your belly, I would encourage you just to see if you can send that breath deeply. So see if you can get that hand on your belly to be the one that's moving and not let that upper chest hand move.
Yeah. All I was going to say is this has been kind of a powerful part of my recovery from having my children. Bearing in mind, my eldest is 12 and a half, having 2 C-sections and what that has done in terms of my neurological connection. And I discovered, like, thinking, I breathe, like, we just do it unconsciously, don't we? It's like, it's the most natural thing. But actually, I was breathing unnaturally in that I wasn't doing it as in into the belly.
Yeah.
But actually, because I'd had children, and I imagine any woman that's listening that has been pregnant, I was breathing into the front of my...
Yes.
And I wasn't getting air into my back. So I was told, like, get into your kind of the back of your rib cage, get into your, like, near your kidneys. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't even aware of that and couldn't get it down into my pelvis because of the scar tissue from the C-section, and realizing, oh my God, my whole breath had been compromised unknowingly. So I've had to teach myself how to do this again and get past that neurological connection.
And it sounds really daunting, doesn't it? Like, oh my goodness, I'm not even breathing right. The number of people that say that to me, like, oh my goodness, like I can't even breathe. Yeah, this is, oh God, such a failure. But actually the thing to remember is this can feel a little bit like rubbing your tummy and patting your head when you first get going. It can feel really disjointed and disconnected and like you're never going to get it. But more than anything that I've done as a physio with diaphragmatic breathing, if you stick at it, there is just a moment in time where it just clicks and suddenly you're like, oh, is this it? Oh, that's fine. And then your body, it's like it just remembers.
Yeah.
Because you will have been doing this as a baby and you will have been doing this as a child. There has just become a point where things have, whether it's stress or physiologically carrying a baby, you cannot diaphragmatically breathe. There is not enough room in there to diaphragmatically breathe. So there will have been something, we know trauma will have had an impact for those, for individuals that have suffered. If you are someone who's had anxiety, we know your breathing is likely to be altered. Asthmatics, we know that if you've got a history of asthma, that brings its own anxiety of breathing. So there's lots of reasons why your breathing can shift and change over time. And yet, your body has a memory of what good breathing is, and your body wants to go back to what good breathing is. And it's just your job to help it. And as soon as it clicks, so now I will still go through moments where I kind of think, oh gosh, I'm suddenly like not breathing, or I feel like a bit out of breath. And why is that? But it's almost like I think the time I'm in a chest breathing state for no reason is becoming less and less and less. So I think now when I switch to chest breathing, because I'm maybe a bit worried about a public speaking event or something, I'll be chest breathing, but I'll be suddenly so aware of it quite quickly. So I'll be able to go, okay, settle down, send it to your belly, use a diaphragm, expand the rib cage. Because now chest breathing feels odd to me again. But we just have to have that re-education. We have to allow ourselves time to relearn that process. And I promise it's easier than it sounds. It's worth sticking with.
Yeah. And just that intentional, conscious connection, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, by the sounds of it, you've been doing it so consciously that it now is easier for you to like flick the switch of, okay, let's drop there.
And we all have tells, don't we? We all have things that, like your version of how you feel at the end of a stressful day, is very unique to you. And it's really, again, one of the other really simple things that women can do is like just learn where stress sits in your body. So for me, I am very, very, very much like top of shoulders and neck. So if I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed, I'll get to the end of the day, or like I'll typically feel it when I'm driving in the car, and suddenly I'll be like, oh gosh, I'm so uncomfortable. And then I kind of go, okay, hang on a minute, this is your neck and your shoulders. Check in with your breathing. Okay, that's gone a bit awry. Right, let's try and sort your breathing out while you drive. Okay, that's a bit better, but maybe I am still feeling a bit tight. Well, okay, well, what now? Okay, well, actually, maybe I am a bit worried about this thing, like this conversation that I've got to have. So actually, let's make the phone call now and let's have that awkward conversation. So I'm not carrying it around now, and let's see if I can get rid of this stress so my body has the time to recover. So I think, becoming aware of where you carry stress and what different emotions feel like in your body, as strange as that sounds, is really important.
It doesn't sound strange at all. And I think, as we talk about kind of high achieving women, I think we've got a really high tolerance for stress. So actually, by the time we notice it, it's probably been sitting there and it's quite a high level. So yeah, I think this dropping into the awareness earlier on, if we can get that somatic awareness, is so powerful.
Because no one wants to realise they're stressed by blowing up at their kids, right? Like, no, and look, I did it like 2 days ago. Like, literally, my three-nager decided that he didn't want his dinner, and then it was my fault that the dinner was cold, half an hour later. So he had a massive tantrum. And I really kind of went from being very in control to not being in control of my emotions and letting him know I was not happy. And actually, yes, I wanted to let him know I was unhappy and his decision-making was poor. However, the way I went about it, I wasn't, on reflection, I could have been very different with him. And actually, I did go from 0 to 100, and that wasn't him, that was me, that was my inability, because I'd already carried stress into that interaction. And again, hindsight, constantly learning about myself, even as someone who's trying to help others, it is that thing of like, oh, Gemma, you didn't eat your dinner properly because your appetite was a bit down already. So, but you needed food, so your appetite was down. Well, that was because you were anxious about what's coming tomorrow. The signs were there. If I had have had a bit more time to check in before giving them dinner and go, oh, okay, I've just made dinner, but I don't feel hungry myself. What does that tell me about myself? What do I know? Okay, well, I know that I lose my appetite when I get anxious. So what's going on for me? And what can I do to sort it out so I can show up better for the boys? And that's not always going to be possible, right? Let's be realistic. We're all humans, but there is a lot to be said for trying to understand what that feels like from a somatic experience, rather than realizing you're anxious or stressed because you've burst into tears on your friend for out of nowhere, or you've blown up at your kids and those sorts of bits. We don't want that to be the realization of, oh yeah, I'm feeling pretty unhappy.
And for me, I mean, the season of my life where perimenopause, it's like you can go to that 0 to 100
Absolutely.
at any given time, even if it's not even a particularly stressful day. So, and I think what you are saying so beautifully, Gemma, and so reassuringly is, I'm hearing a lot about, like, if you're perimenopausal, what you need to do is eat protein and lift heavy. Like, that is the answer. And I know they play an important part in it. But I like to get up and do movement of a morning. I'm a morning person. And I love that you talk about movement rather than exercise, because movement is so natural. We think about, oh, movement's got to be going to the gym or doing a class or whatever it might be. For somebody like me that might, say, have half an hour of a morning,
mm-hmm.
and I'm at this life stage where I know that I'm in a heightened stress state because of the demands that I've got or the season of life that I'm in, what would your recommendations be on that kind of, if I'd only got half an hour, and it may be sometimes I've got even less than that, but let's say on average, I've got half an hour.
Yeah.
We've talked about breathing. We've talked about, the softness.
Mm-hmm.
What else would you be kind of recommending for a client like me?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think what I'll say at the top of that is that there is a certain degree of individual right answer for any individual person. So what I would be doing with a client is sitting with them and finding out what works for them. And that really starts with, like, what brings you joy.
Mm.
There was a client that I worked with recently, and she'd had various aches and pains, and she was not in a great place, and she was pretty fed up. And thankfully, in our conversation, she brought up the fact that she used to do martial arts as a kid, like as a teenager. And she came to me like really low confidence, really kind of within herself, really, really unhappy, and really not trusting her own body. And it came out that she used to do martial arts as a teenager. And then I said to her, I was like, well, how did you feel when you were doing martial arts? And it was just such lovely words, like, you know, strong, powerful, confident. She talked about really trusting her own body. And she said that she sailed through injury, like she'd pick up injuries all the time, but she knew that her body would recover if she gave it the right conditions and all these sorts of brilliant things. So for her mornings now look like she gets up, she checks in, she does some really, really, really gentle movement, which actually we found a way for that quickly to flow into movements that really resemble martial art moves. So for her, and actually martial arts is amazing when you're doing they call it forms in martial arts. So you're doing these like beautiful, full body, lots of balance, lots of strength, lots of stability. So she kind of can work through her own version of kickboxing martial arts on her own, slow it down if she wants more stability, speed it up if she wants more cardio. So she's found a way of incorporating this like really lovely, joyful movement. So I think, without wanting to completely cop out, I think there's a version of like feel what feels good, you know, find what feels good for you. But honestly, if you were saying I don't know where to start, I think a check-in is always good. Like whether that's with a cup of tea, whether that's with hot water, whether that's whilst petting your dog, I don't care. Like don't roll out of, I'm not a fan of rolling out of bed and hitting the gym within, 3 minutes. And this is like a proper bro science thing, right? So the men will be told 5 a.m. club, roll out of bed, set the alarm, don't get a drink, hit the gym, be there for an blah, blah, blah. Not for us. Okay. So we're going to get up, we're going to check in. How's my brain? Like, how's my mind? How's my body? How's my breath? 3 stages. Okay. So just literally 5 minutes. If you want to journal that, doesn't matter.
And so when you say check-in, are you almost going through your body going, what am I feeling? What's going on here?
Yeah, I really like to do a head to toe scan. So I literally just I'll sit in stillness and let's not give it the pressurized term of meditation. Let's not call it mindfulness. Let's just do a head to toe check-in. Like, am I feeling any tension in my head? How are my shoulders feeling? Have I got any aches and pains? And you're not changing it, you're just noticing it. So what does my body feel like on waking up this morning? Is my tummy feeling bloated? Are my hips feeling stiff where I'm sitting? And as you get good at it, it literally takes you 2 or 3 minutes to just mentally go head to toe. So that little 3-point check-in I think is really nice, like mind, body, breath. How am I feeling? And then if you were literally like, I have got no idea what brings me joy and I don't know what's going to make me feel good, I can tell you that getting outside for a 15-minute walk in nature is going to feel good, because that's where we're meant to be. And we're meant to have sunlight early and we're meant to be out in nature early. And it's a little bit harder now. Like, we're kind of into November and it's, the mornings are getting darker. I get it. However, there's something pretty special about being outside as the sun comes up with a cup of coffee in your hand and just taking a bit of time to move out in nature. And that might look like walking the dog. But even walking the dog, you can either walk the dog and think, oh my God, I've got 20 minutes and I've got to get back, and has he had a poo, and and squeeze it in and be rushing around and swearing at the dog because he's taking too long. Or you can be kind to yourself, make sure you have a good 20 minutes, pick a route that you want, and even move through the world in a really intentional way. So, rather than letting your head while you're walking go to what's on my to-do list, what's the first phone call, have I packed the kids' school bags, like give yourself 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes for yourself. So as you're walking the dog, am I contacting the ground in the same way with my right and my left foot? Can I feel my hip joint actually truly working? Can I feel my thigh bone swinging underneath me like a pendulum? Can I feel that I'm lightly rotating and swinging my body? And actually, what happens if I more actively rotate and swing my body? Does that feel good? How tall can I make myself as I'm walking? Like, there's so many ways that you can take that body check-in, that body scan that you've done. And if you're thinking, oh, my hips feel really stiff this morning, I'm not sure why, great. As you're walking, can you lengthen out your stride? Can you open up your hip? Can you ask for some length through your hip flexors and the front of your body? If your shoulders are tight, like, can you relax your shoulders as you're walking? Like, there's so many things that you can apply. And this intentional movement is what I think is really, really critical. And it's how you get to know yourself. It's how you get to know what your body needs. And it's how you learn to trust yourself. You know, if you've woken up and you feel tension through your hip and you can do something to just dial in and pay attention and ask for some softness in that area, and it changes, then goodness, the next time you have an ache in your hip, you're not going to care. You're going to know what to do about it. So your trust in yourself, your trust in your body just grows and grows and grows.
I love that concept of self-trust. And I know it's such an important part of what you do.
Yeah, it's huge.
So you've shared so much with us, and I know people are going to kind of go, where can we find out more about Gemma? And also the services you offer. Would you mind kind of giving us a sense of that?
Yeah, sure. So, so I am a working physio, and I've got some stuff on social media. So it's Made for More Movement is how I put some stuff out on social media, just some general advice and some typical physio bits, I suppose. But the thing that I'm really excited that I'm just about to launch is a program just for women, particularly for driven women who are feeling disconnected, powerless, a bit overwhelmed. And it's a 12-week program where I'm just going to guide people through a process that's going to mean that they feel like they trust themselves, and they're going to feel stronger in themselves, and they're going to feel more connected to themselves. And I'm really excited because I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Love that. So when you say 12-week program, is that an online program? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so my plan at the minute is to do it like a hybrid, because I think that, the joy of online is it just means it's really accessible. So what I would love to do is have the opportunity to meet with women physically at the start and at the end of that transformational journey. So have an assessment with them face to face, make sure that we're leaning into good movement, good quality, get to know one another well as well. And that will involve going out in nature, that will involve a good walk, that will involve connecting with the real world and how you move through it, and really kind of getting to know how you interact with your daily life as well. And then there'll be another touch point at the end where hopefully that will be like with a group of women coming together. So the group of women that have been on the journey will kind of come together and have a bit of a celebration event, and we'll lean into like all the good stuff. So some movement, some breath work, some good food, and just get together and celebrate, hopefully at the end of a really, really great time. And then in between that, the rest of it will be done remotely to just make it as accessible as possible. So yeah, lots of online check-ins and lots of resources online, and the movement that they'll be doing will be very bespoke to their own needs. So it'll be whatever's come out of the assessment. We'll tailor a combination of yoga and movement and possibly some strength work if that's appropriate to tackle various issues that people have. So yeah, it'll be very bespoke, very individualized, but hopefully within a kind of community setting as well to give people the support. So yeah, it's called In Her Element, and it will be launching really soon, and I'm very excited. So yeah.
And I'm really hoping there's still a place available for me on this, because I want to get on that. So Gemma, it's a joy to know you. It's a joy to have you on the podcast. And literally every time I speak to you, my nervous system goes, this is more of what I need, not the social media stuff about 5 a.m. club doing whatever. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And I really hope that everybody listening gets that sense as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, I'd love for you to share it on social media or with the amazing women in your life. I'd also love to connect with you. So head over to luminate-group.co.uk where you'll find ways to stay in touch. And if this episode resonated with you, one of the best ways to support the show is by subscribing and leaving a review on iTunes. Your review helps other women discover this resource, so together we can lift each other up as we rise. So thanks for listening. Until next time, take care.